Good evening, Pak Mateus and all of my friends. Thank you for the opportunity given to me to deliver my presentation today. Well, the topic of my presentation today is Language Curriculum Design, Chapter 4, from Nation and McAllister 2010. Well, this presentation consists of three main points. The first one is purpose, the second one is the 20 principles, and the third one or the last one is using the list of principles. Now we come to the very first point of this presentation, which is the purpose. The aim of this part of the curriculum design process is to decide how learning can be encouraged. Well, now we will discuss the 20 principles. These 20 principles consist of three main sections. The first one, we have content and sequencing. The second one, we have format and presentation. And the last one, we also have monitoring and assessment. Therefore, the principles described are based on a pedagogical perspective, focusing on curriculum design and also the teacher training. We come into the first discussion, which is content and also sequencing. It is concerning with what goes into a language course and also the order in which language items appear in the course. Then, the course aims to make sure that the learners are gaining something useful from the course. And then, content and also sequencing consist of 8 main points: frequency, strategies and autonomy, spaced retrieval, language system, keep moving forward, teachability, learning burden, and also interference. Well, the first one is frequency. A language course should provide the best possible coverage of language in use through the inclusion of items that occur frequently in the language, so that the learners get the best return for their learning effort. And here are the things the teacher should do to give the best available return for their learning effort. First, include all the high-frequency items which are at the appropriate level for the learners. Second, ignore over the low-frequency items that have been included. And the last one, provide substantial amounts of practice of the high-frequency items and in and out of the class. The second one, we have strategies and autonomy. A language course should train learners in how to learn a language so they can become effective and independent language learners. Here are promoting learner autonomy by Cottrell in 2000. Learning goals, the language learning process, tasks, learner strategies, and also reflection on learning. Now, we move to spaced retrieval. Well, learners should have increasingly spaced, repeated opportunity to give attention to wanted items in a variety of contexts. And we have language system. The language focus of a course needs to be on generalizable features of the language system. Here are the areas of focus. First one, vocabulary. There are high-frequency vocabulary, underlying meaning, and word parts. The second, we have structure, which is frequent structures. And the last one, we have discourse, which are topic type, rhetorical structure, and also cohesive devices. Now is keep moving forward. A language course should progressively cover useful language items, skills, and also strategies. Well, the most effective way of making sure that the principle of progressive coverage is applied is to make sure that Each learning task has a goal which fits with the plan for the course. And then, the next point is teachability. The teaching of language items should take account of the most favorable sequencing of these items and should take account of when the learners are most ready to learn them. According to Pieneman et al., 1988, classroom second language learners follow a fixed order of stages in their acquisition of second language grammatical forms, and even more importantly, that these forms can only be learned in a particular order. And now, the number 7 is learning burden. The course should help the learners to make the most effective use of previous knowledge. There is a plenty of evidence, however, that aspects of the first language can help the learning. This help can occur at all levels within the language, with pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, and also discourse. And now we come to the last point. It is about interference. The items in a language course should be sequenced so that the items which are learned together have a positive effect on each other for learning, and so that the interference effect are avoided. Well, the easiest solution to this sequencing problem is to let the occurrence of items in naturally occurring spoken or written text, which determine the order in which they occur in the course. And this also takes the control of sequencing away from the curriculum designer and thus avoids the words association that the curriculum designer may bring to sequencing. Well, the next section deals with format and presentation. Format and presentation consist of motivation, 4 strengths, comprehensible input, fluency, output, deliberate learning, time on task, depth of processing, integrative motivation, and also learning style. It is concerning with what actually happens in the classroom and during the learning. And in this aspect of curriculum design, the teachers may have their greatest influence on the course. The very first point deals with motivation. As much as possible, the learners should be interested and also excited about the learning language, and they should come to value this learning. Well, motivation is a very important determinant of the amount of time, involvement, and effect that learners give to the learning. And the best motivation is intrinsic, which is springing from within the learner. And the second section is for strengths. A course should include a roughly even balance of the 4 strengths of meaning-focused input, language-focused learning, meaning-focused output, and also fluency activities. If a course does not contain a suitable balance of the 4 strengths, it may be necessary to change the nature of existing activities, convince teachers of the need to include the neglected activities, and inform teachers and learners of the defining characteristics of the strengths. Well, now we move into comprehensible input. There should be substantial quantities of interesting comprehensible receptive activity in both listening and also reading. And here is the importance of large quantities in suitably graded listening. First, set aside a regular time in each language class for listening to a short story or a continuing story read by the teacher. Second, provide tape stories that learners can take home or listen to in the class. And the last one, use quantity-based listening techniques like listening to pictures, listen and draw, and also padded question. And the next one we have fluency. A language course should provide activities aimed at increasing the fluency with which the learners can use the language they already know, both receptively and also productively. One of the biggest obstacles to fluency in a foreign language situation is the lack of opportunity outside the class to use the foreign language to do the communication. And now we will discuss about output. The learners should be pushed to produce the language in both speaking and writing over a range of discourse types. And the next we have deliberate learning. The course should include language-focused learning in the sound system, vocabulary, grammar, and also discourse areas. And here are language-focused learning in a language course which has the following effects. 1. Speed up learning. 2. Help learners overcome barriers to their language development. And the third one or the last one is have a positive effect on meaning-focused learning. And here are also some examples of language-focused learning. Dictation, learning vocabulary on cards and also getting feedback on errors. Well, now we move to the time on task. As much time as possible should be spent using and focusing on the second language because the more time learners spend on language learning, the more they will learn about that. And the next one, we will talk about depth of processing. Learners should process the items to be learned as deeply and as thoughtfully as possible. It is because the items that are repeated without thoughtful attention will not be learned as quickly or retained as long as those that are related to past experience, result in some meaning-directed effort, or are thoughtfully analyzed. Now is integrative motivation. The course should be presented so that the learners have the most favorable attitudes to the language, user of the language, use of the language, the teacher's skill in teaching the language, and their chance of success in learning the language. And motivational teaching practice has 4 principles of aspects. First, creating basic motivational conditions. Then, generating initial student motivation. The next, maintaining and promoting motivation, and also encouraging positive retrospective self-evaluation. And the last section is learning style. There should be opportunity for learners to work with the learning materials in ways that most suit their individual learning style. And here are some suggestions of the learning style. 1. Group size. Learning individually or with other learners. 2. Speed and intensity. Learning at a slow, thoughtful pace or at a fast and intensive pace. The last one, use of first language. Learning through translation or through the second language. And now is the last section. The last section is about monitoring and assessment. Well, monitoring and assessment consist of 2 points. The first one is ongoing needs and environment analysis and also feedback. Therefore, monitoring and assessment deals with monitoring and assessment and to some degree of evaluation. First one, ongoing needs and also environment analysis. The selection, gradation, presentation, and assessment of the material in a language course should be based on a careful consideration of the learners and their needs, the teaching conditions, and also the time and resources available. Well, this principle stresses the importance of doing environment analysis and also needs analysis during the planning of a course. And the second one is feedback. Learners should receive helpful feedback which will allow them to improve the quality of their language use. And finally, we come into the last section of the presentation. We will discuss about using the list of principles. There are 5 points. First, to guide the design of language teaching courses and also lessons. Second, to evaluate existing courses and also lessons. Next, to help teachers integrate and contextualize information gained from keeping up with the developments in their field. Then, to provide a basis for teachers to use to reflect on their practice and professional development. And the last is to act as one of many possible reference points in teacher training courses.